I'm Sue Schrant with the Arthritis Foundation. I'm our Director of Patient Engagement. I'm very excited to introduce and welcome to the stage Ann Palmer, our President and CEO at the Arthritis Foundation, to get us kicked off for this very exciting day.
It's so important for you to be here and to raise your hand and your voice to participate. You know, this is a meeting that we're co-hosting with CARRA, but one that the Arthritis Foundation is truly passionate about, and we're just so excited to have so many of you here, and I hope you understand the importance of being here and using your voice and making that voice work not just for your family, but for so many other families. You know, this meeting is critical to shaping the future of drug discovery. And what's really important today is that we have not just wonderful JIA families here, moms and dads, but we have the FDA, we have doctors, and we have other industry leaders. So I want to just say thank you so much to the partners who have come in as well. We're obviously honored to have the FDA here with us, but we're also honored to have industry leaders, researchers, and so many people who are here and want to listen to the voice of people with JA, the parents, and to really learn from those insights and take those insights forward. We're particularly pleased to have the PRCSG group here from Cincinnati, and I want to welcome them as well. They're from Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center and are special guests of ours as well. You know, we have had the privilege of hosting an osteoarthritis patient-focused drug development meeting last March. And we're continuing that work, and so very privileged to be also hosting this meeting and looking forward, as Sue said, to the great results that will come from this. Participation in research has come a long way. Many of you know that we used to talk about patients being subjects of research. And I'd like to believe that the Arthritis Foundation has had a real part in making this change. And this meeting certainly represents that. This is, you know, really an opportunity for us to change that from just being a patient participant in research. But you need to know that now we're in a position where you're going to be able to influence how research is designed, the kinds of research that we focus on. And this is just really a powerful thing, and I hope that you believe and understand that we've come a long way, and we're all going to be better for this collaboration. Not only will you as patients and family members be better, but we're going to be better as a community because we won't have wasted resources. The Arthritis Foundation is proud of its work in improving care. We've had a long partnership with CARRA for many years. We've invested in the registry and have expanded that to many other forms of disease like lupus and JDM. We've launched a program called Partners, which is specifically designed to engage and offer families the opportunity to get engaged in research. We'll be doing some of that at our JIA conference while we're here. But you know, creating treatments for patients is about collaboration. And we can't do this without all of you in this room. And we truly appreciate your involvement today. We look forward to the outcomes of this meeting and the bright future that this represents in beginning here. And your participation in this is the path to a cure. We're committed to bringing you as many opportunities as possible like this for you to join it with us and the Arthritis Foundation and CARRA and in being able to move this agenda forward. So again, my heartfelt thanks for each of you for being here. It's a very exciting day. We can't wait to listen and learn and take the findings and move them forward. And now I'd like to introduce Yuki Kamara, who is our co-sponsor. Yuki is the past chair of CARRA. We've had a wonderful opportunity to work with her. And we're pleased to have her here. She's going to talk a little bit about CARRA, and she's a great partner to the Arthritis Foundation. Yuki.
I'm going to tell you about how much treatment has improved over the last few years for JIA, but we still have some place to go. So that's what we're here to do. And we need to hear from you and get your ideas and opinions in order to move things forward. So I just want to tell you a little bit about CARRA. CARRA stands for the Childhood Arthritis and Rheumatology Research Alliance, and we began in 2002 as a pediatric rheumatologist researcher-led research network. And we've grown quite a bit so that now we have 120 sites, which you see on this map, spread across the United States and Canada, and now we have over 500 members. And we're really pleased that over 90% of all the pediatric rheumatologists in the country are members of CARRA. This is a picture of the annual scientific meeting, which was held this April in Denver, and we welcomed over 600 participants to this meeting. And we have had a very strong relationship with the Arthritis Foundation for many years. Actually, the Arthritis Foundation has been funding our infrastructure since CARRA began, and we embarked on a very important strategic partnership in 2015 that has really raised us to the next level. CARRA's mission is to conduct collaborative research to prevent, treat, and cure pediatric rheumatic diseases. And our vision is a world free of limitations from pediatric rheumatic disease. Our values are inclusiveness, trust, impact, and innovation. One of the most important and central research projects of CARRA is the CARRA Registry. The CARRA Registry, the new CARRA Registry began in the middle of 2015, and since that time, we've been able to enroll over 6,000 patients, which is a long way towards our goal of enrolling at least 10,000 patients to be followed for at least 10 years. And here is a map that shows you all the CARRA Registry sites and the enrollment of patients. And we hope to learn a lot. We're already learning a lot from the registry, but the main aims of the registry are to understand the long-term outcomes of our patients with JIA and other rheumatic diseases, so that we know what happens to the patients with JIA as they get older and grow into adulthood and beyond. We also want to be able to understand the safety, both the short-term and long-term safety of the medications that we use to treat our patients, which is actually one of the #1 concerns that have been expressed by our patients and parents about medications. And through studies that are embedded within the registry, we're going to be looking at the comparative effectiveness of treatments that are standard in treating certain specific diseases, such as systemic JIA and poly-JIA. And through clinical trials, we will be studying the efficacy of new treatments to treat JIA and other diseases. And this is a goal and hope that we have, and the registry gets us closer to this goal of being able to give every patient the opportunity to participate in research. So patient engagement has been a very important part of CARRA since its very beginning. And we've involved patients and parents in many of our research projects over the years, but recently, over the last few years, we've really stepped it up and formalized the engagement that we do in research with our patients and parents, so that they are involved, that you are involved in the process every step of the way, side by side with our researchers. So as Anne referred to, we have patient engagement initiatives such as Partners, which is funded by the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, or PCORI, which brings together CARRA, the Arthritis Foundation, PR Coin, the Lupus Foundation, and CureJM to really engage patients and families in research. And we're doing things such as creating training programs, for example, for patients and parents and also researchers to be able to perform patient-centered research. The registry newsletter is another example of a co-initiated project between patients and parents and researchers. Patients and parents have a big role to play in developing the content for the CARRA Registry newsletter, which is what we give to all of our participants who participate in the registry, and for anybody who's interested to find out what's going on in the registry, what have we learned from the registry, and what other sub-studies are going on in the registry, as well as other helpful stories that patients can benefit from. And we have really been embedding patients and families into the research process from the ground up by having patients and families participate in the CARRA annual meeting. We welcomed over 60 patient and parent attendees at our annual meeting, for example, and they participated in the CARRA work groups, which are focused on specific diseases and doing and understanding research in specific areas. We have patient partners who are involved in the nuts and bolts of CARRA-wide research projects such as Stop JIA and Frost and Promote. And we also have patients and parents now involved in reviewing grants that we give out through the CARRA AF grant process so that they can help us determine which grants are the most important to fund. And patients and parents have taught us also that we need to translate our publications and our research findings so that they're understandable for patients and families and the public to understand what it is that we learned and how they can benefit from it. And of course, this FDA externally led patient-focused drug development meeting that we're co-sponsoring with the Arthritis Foundation is going to be a very important facet of understanding how we conduct our research going forward. So what we hope to learn today at this meeting is how JIA affects children, young people, and families, and how to identify the most bothersome symptoms that we need to address for our patients. What the current burden of disease and its treatments are. I mean, we have really, you'll see later that we've come a really, really long way from where we were 25 years ago when I started my training, but we still have a long ways to go. And we need more and better treatments for JIA, and we need to learn how to get there as quickly as we can. So thank you very much.
My colleagues from the FDA and I are honored to be a part of this landmark event that has brought the juvenile arthritis community together to advance the development of new treatments for the disease. For this opportunity, I would like to thank the Arthritis Foundation and the CARRA, or the Childhood Arthritis and Rheumatology Research Alliance, and all the staff that was involved in planning this meeting. But more importantly, I would like to thank all of you who overcame the challenges and discomforts of travel, and those who couldn't attend in person but participate remotely and on the phone and on the web to share your powerful stories with us. You are here today to educate us about what are the things that are most important to you as parents, families, and caregivers who deal with this chronic illness. And we are here to listen and try to better understand this very important perspective, the perspective of patients with juvenile arthritis and their families, and the struggles you face every day. The FDA has recognized the need to have all stakeholders involved, and particularly patients, in identifying the key elements of clinical development, such as endpoints and outcomes that would represent more accurately the burden of disease. In that respect, the FDA is committed to including patients' perspective in drug development. Over the past 6 years, FDA has conducted over 24 patient-focused drug development meetings in various conditions. As the PFDD initiative began, with the aim of providing a systematic way of gathering patient perspective on their conditions and treatment options, we are very happy to see externally led patient-focused drug development meetings like this one we're attending today to continue this important work of advancing approaches to gathering input from patients and caregivers. The goal of a patient-focused approach to drug development and drug evaluation are to develop treatments that meaningfully address the aspects of disease that are most important to patients, to tailor clinical trials to the needs of patients, to reflect patients' perspective on the benefits and harms of treatment in drug evaluation, and to ensure that the information that comes out of a drug development program accurately represents those benefits and harms and is directly relevant to patients' treatment decisions and needs. Information gathered or provided through this format can better inform the benefit-risk assessment of new therapies, identify areas of unmet needs, and help drug developers and regulatory authorities such as FDA design programs that are more relevant to address how patients feel and function. This has resulted in patient groups having a significant impact on drug development in the recent years, and we hope this continues. We also have representation from industry, academia, and other medical product development stakeholders in the room and on the web. And we're all here today to learn from you. Today's meeting is a very important dialogue, and I hope this is just the beginning that will lay the foundation of future conversations. The juvenile arthritis community is clearly engaged and eager to participate in this effort, which is evident from the attendance in this meeting, and from what I understand, there is even a bigger crowd coming later today. This meeting is as important to us as it is to you. So I would like to thank you for having us here, having this meeting. We really appreciate the opportunity, and we're looking forward to a very productive meeting and discussion today. Thank you.
I just wanted to tell you, start with how far we've come. So when this picture of this poor little boy was taken over 100 years ago, who had JIA, there was not very much that could be done for this child. And you can see that he is going to be suffering for his entire lifetime with disability, unable to even sit up, and certainly not stand up or even care for himself. And with the advent of treatments like aspirin and steroids, there was some improvement, but still there was a lot of disability and deformity that accompanied JIA. And even in the early 2000s, it wasn't unusual to see children with JIA in wheelchairs at JIA conferences, and also, with deformed joints and needing assistive devices like you see in the boy in the background. And this is what we see today. This is a picture taken at JIA Camp a few years ago, and I challenge anybody to be able to tell that there's anything wrong with this bunch of kids. So we have really come a long way. And a lot of the reason for the improvement in outcomes has to do with the improvement in the treatment that we have for children with JIA. You can see in the early part of this past century, actually up to about 1980 or so, there really was very little in the way of treatment, aside from aspirin, things like gold and penicillamine, cortisone, and NSAIDs, which are medicines like naproxen and ibuprofen. And with the advent of methotrexate, we finally started to make some headway in the treatment of JIA and improving outcomes, and it is a medicine that we use to this day. But really, it was after about 2000 or so when we started to see the explosion of medications that have become available and are also very, very effective, that really, really changed outcomes for our kids. 5 of those treatments have been approved for use in JIA. I'll just show you again. And these have been done through the approvals, regulatory approvals through FDA and EMA have been done through clinical trials that were done in JIA. So just to go through some of the different categories of medicines that are available to treat all forms of inflammatory arthritis, not just JIA. These include the most familiar, which are the TNF inhibitors, and I bolded and starred the ones that are approved for use in JIA. We have T-cell activation inhibitors. We have IL-6 inhibitors. We have inhibitors of B cells, of the cytokine IL-1, which is primarily used in the treatment of systemic JIA and autoinflammatory diseases. And then we have some new ones, inhibitors of IL-17, for example, which primarily are being used in spondyloarthritis and psoriatic arthritis, and IL-12 and 23 inhibitors. And then we have some newcomers, some oral small molecules, such as the JAK inhibitors and phosphodiesterase inhibitor, which are being used for various forms of inflammatory arthritis. And this is just what's out there now. So there's a lot of many new other medications that are being developed, some in the same classes as these, some in new classes that are in the pipeline to be used in inflammatory arthritis. So you see that these 5 medications have been approved for use in JIA through clinical trials, but actually there were 2 others, infliximab and golimumab, that were studied in clinical trials, hopefully to be approved for use in JIA, but unfortunately, for one reason or another, did not get approved, even though we know that they're effective. In fact, golimumab has recently been approved to be used in the injectable form in Europe. The good news, though, is that all the drugs in green are being studied, including the IV form of golimumab, in clinical trials, so that hopefully in the next few years they will be available for use in JIA. So I just want to take a few minutes to talk to you quickly about JIA and to tell you that JIA is not just one disease. It's many different diseases, starting with the little girl with one swollen knee who develops uveitis or inflammation in the eye, to the little girl who presents with multiple swollen joints and in her body, to the older child that presents with arthritis that looks just like rheumatoid arthritis in adults, to the older patient boy who develops enthesitis or inflammation around the heel and also around the spine and sacroiliac joints, the psoriasis that affects and causes arthritis, as well as arthritis that's accompanied by fevers and rashes. So these are the current classification of JIA, the categories that exist currently, and they're far from perfect because they really just rely on clinical characteristics such as the number of joints that are involved, whether or not blood test is negative or positive, whether there's enthesitis, whether there's psoriasis in the patient or in a family member, or whether there's systemic symptoms that accompany it. So they're far from perfect, and you hear actually stories, when the panels come up about, many of these children, having one diagnosis and then being re-diagnosed with another disease, because these are just clinical. And hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to identify and group patients on a more biological basis so that we will know precisely what the patient has and which drug is the best one to treat every patient. So just going through the different diseases quickly. So the persistent oligoarthritis patients are patients like these 2 little girls that start in early childhood with 1 or 2 swollen joints, very often the knee. And these are the patients that are really at high risk for developing the uveitis that's asymptomatic. So that's why your kids need to get screened frequently for this complication, because if it's not caught, they can develop terrible glaucoma, cataracts, and even blindness. The extended oligoarthritis patients start out looking like this first little girl, but then go on to develop other joints so that they have 5 or more joints within 6 months of diagnosis, and these patients are also at risk for developing uveitis. The rheumatoid factor negative polyarthritis is just that. These are patients with many joints, 5 or more joints, but usually many, many more than that affect multiple joints, and their blood test is negative for rheumatoid factor. These are kids that usually present, again, relatively early in childhood and have arthritis of the small joints as well as the large. Rheumatoid factor positive polyarthritis are patients also that have small and large joint symmetrical arthritis usually, but are rheumatoid factor positive, and they usually start at a later age, age 10 and above, and also affect girls more often than boys and have features like rheumatoid nodules that make them very similar to adults with rheumatoid arthritis. Enthesitis-related arthritis usually affects older kids, preteens and teenagers, although it can start earlier, and usually boys more often than girls, and can affect usually the large joints in an asymmetrical fashion, as well as the enthesitis, which is basically inflammation where tendons and ligaments insert into the bone, very commonly around the heel, but can occur in other places, and can affect and cause inflammation of the spine as well as the sacroiliac joints. And then psoriatic arthritis is arthritis accompanying psoriasis in a patient that can have many different features, including arthritis patterns such as dactylitis, which is inflammation like you see in the toe on the left. So it affects different toes and fingers, as well as nail changes. And then systemic arthritis is the one that's very different looking from the other types of arthritis because of the high fevers that accompany it, as well as the rash, the distinctive rash that often accompanies the fevers, and can also affect many vital organs with inflammation as well. And then undifferentiated arthritis is basically arthritis, JIA, that doesn't fit into any one category. So we conducted a survey with the Arthritis Foundation of JIA parents and patients, and we're really delighted that we had an extremely robust response with almost 600 unique respondents, and we asked them what JIA category they had. And this is, you can see them displayed here. I think that every JIA category is represented with a slight overrepresentation of the systemic JIA category, numbering, I don't know if you can see, but it's about 19%. Usually they represent more like 10 to 15% of our JIA patient population, but nonetheless, you can see that every category is represented. And I just want to take a few minutes now just to talk about systemic JIA because the story of systemic JIA is very illustrative of the dramatic advances that we have made in the treatment of JIA, and also it demonstrates how far we have to go. So JIA, systemic JIA, is basically a disease that causes arthritis, and like I said, high spiking fevers as well as rash, but it can also involve many other areas of the body and can cause swollen glands, swollen liver and spleen, inflammation and fluid around the heart and other vital organs, as well as life-threatening complications, especially something called macrophage activation syndrome, or MAS. So, it is true that some patients with systemic JIA get all better after 6 or 12 months. They don't need any more treatment and the disease never comes back. But unfortunately, for the vast majority of patients with systemic JIA, they continue with chronic disease, either systemic disease, which can be life-threatening, or severe arthritis, and in some unfortunate patients, both. And the problem with systemic JIA is that the usual arthritis treatments, such as methotrexate and even biologics, such as the TNF inhibitors, don't work very well. So because of this, we were forced to treat these patients for years and years, many times, with toxic medications such as systemic steroids, which result in stunted growth and steroid side effects like you see in this little boy. And even with all that, we had very poor disease control, which also stunts growth and which can cause destroyed joints, as you see in this little boy who has terrible joint deformities and who underwent bilateral hip replacement surgery a few years after this picture was taken. So the discovery that these patients respond to different biologics, to IL-1 and IL-6 inhibition, was really a tremendous one and really changed the outlook for patients with systemic JIA. This is from a very early study in 2005 by Virginia Pasquale at Baylor, which showed that 9 patients with systemic JIA who were refractory to other treatments, all other treatments, responded rapidly to IL-1 inhibition. And you can see the top 2 graphs, fever and arthritis, that they both disappeared for most of the patients within a matter of 2 weeks after starting this medication. And these are patients that hadn't responded to anything. And you can see that the blood test results also followed this sort of pattern of excellent response. So the biologics have meant a tremendous amount, and there are a lot of pros that we can be thankful for in terms of biologic treatment for systemic JIA. So as I said, patients have an excellent response, most patients do, and they have a rapid response of their systemic features and of their arthritis. And the really wonderful news is that we hardly have to use steroids in most of the patients. And in some patients, we don't even ever have to use steroids, which is almost a miracle. And then there's also some evidence in case series that shows that possibly that if you treat the patients with systemic JI very early with medications that are effective, like the IL-1 and or IL-6 treatments, that their chances of remission are much better. But then there are cons. So some, because we're treating these patients so early, there are patients who may never have needed to take biologics who are treated with them. And of course, there are unknown long-term side effects, and some of these patients have developed lung disease that seem to be more common now than they were years ago, so we're not sure. And of course, the treatments are very expensive, and they're also painful because they almost always have to be given by a needle. They take time to give, especially if they're IV, and they're disruptive of lives. And then not everyone responds optimally. Similarly, for other types of JIA, there have been tremendous changes in long-term outcomes, but there's a but to it too, that some patients don't respond as well as they should, and you'll hear from our panel discussants that they've had to try a series of many different medications over time, and sometimes people run out of options. And of course, we know that the earlier the disease is controlled, the better the outcome, so we want to be able to treat these patients with effective treatments early on. And of course, the long-term side effects, as well as the other issues with biologic treatment. So it is true, biologics have totally changed the outlook for many patients with JIA. Like you see this little girl with poly-JIA that I showed you earlier, and a few months later, look how she looks now. Incredible difference. But not every patient responds. So we need more new treatments. In our survey, we showed that patients have had to take a lot of medicines. 73% have had to take 2 or more medications. 20% have taken 5 or more medicines, and 2% have taken over 10. And patients and their caregivers want their treatments to be more effective and safe and less painful. And then we found that there are currently still symptoms that are not addressed satisfactorily by the treatments. So 73% of the patients that we surveyed continue to have significant symptoms that that need addressing. And some of the most common ones were pain, fatigue, side effects, and trouble keeping up with their friends and activities. These results were corroborated by the OMERACT JIA Core Set work group, which has worked hard over the last few years to develop measures that should be studied in clinical trials that are important to patients and parents. They went through a very rigorous process, and what they found was very similar in terms of the measurements of outcomes that need to be looked at in JIA. So, you know, we have a lot of good news, but we still have challenges. We need to increase the number and types of treatment choices that are available, make new and innovative and safer treatments that are easier to give, treatments that target specific JIA types so we know what treatment to give each person when they start. And we need clinical trials to test new treatments in ways that can be done more quickly. Don't take years and years to accumulate enough patients and include a wider range of patients that are representative of the patients that we treat and that answer more questions that patients want to know and also measure the impact of the outcomes that are important to our patients. Thank you.
So at this point, we're going to hope the technology gods are kind and that the question will generate from the back. So the first question is, how old were you or your child at diagnosis? It's like a race, watching which one is going to win. Okay. Got a lot of people diagnosed young at this point, but quite a range. Okay. All right, we'll call it good there. So I think the winner here was ages 2 to 5, but there's a big range represented. So let's go to the second question. How long have you or your child had JIA? Oh, wow, we've got a lot of established patients and families. Oh, but the others are catching up. Great, okay. And then the third question, and this is going to be about symptomology and some of what Yuki showed on her slide. So we want to know which of the following symptoms has had the greatest impact on you. And I know it can be awfully hard to pick, but those are your answer choices: fatigue, pain, decreased mobility, reduced participation, stiffness, and then other. Okay, and that's definitely consistent with what we saw in our survey, with what came out of the OMERACT results. We also conducted several focus groups before today and certainly saw that pain and fatigue and reduced participation in sports was a major issue, but so are so many other symptoms. So we can go back to the slide deck now, thank you. That exercise really tees us up for this panel discussion. We get a sense that we have a lot of commonality as a community, but we also have differences. And so now we're going to hear from 4 people who can provide their unique stories and really help shape some of that data and give it that human face. So I'm just going to turn it over to Angie. They'll all introduce themselves, and so it'll be one after the other. And then as soon as they're finished, we will come back together for that large group discussion. So Angie.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Angie Vago, and I'm from Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. I'm an English teacher and a private tutor. I also volunteer with many juvenile arthritis-related organizations such as the Arthritis Foundation, PR Coin, CARRA, and Partners. My husband Sean and I just celebrated our 26th anniversary, and we have 2 daughters. Laura is 22 and Erin is 19. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the musical Les Miserables. Near the beginning of that show, there's a song called I Dreamed a Dream. Fantine, a destitute single mother, sings this song as she laments the loss of her husband and the havoc wreaked in her life by that unfortunate event. When talking about the happy times, she sings, "And the world was a song, and the song was exciting. There was a time, then it all went wrong." I know that it describes a very different situation than what we're here to discuss today, but the first couple of lines of this song epitomize the way my husband and I felt when our girls were born and when they were young children. Later in the song, Fantine elaborates on how she felt after it all went wrong. But the tigers come at night with their voices soft as thunder, and they tear your hope apart. That tiger for us was juvenile arthritis. Laura, our 22-year-old, began telling us around age 7 that she was tired and that things hurt. When she was 9, the pain became much easier for her to identify as she began to have pain in her heels, then her left knee, and then both hands. Finally, 3 days before Christmas, when she was 12 years old, we saw a pediatric rheumatologist who didn't hesitate to diagnose her with juvenile idiopathic arthritis. Today, her worst symptoms are centered around her hands and wrists, plus her feet and ankles. Erin, who is now 19, began to experience pain around age 13, and next month we will mark her 5-year anniversary of her own diagnosis. Erin's largest challenges include fatigue and struggling to have full use of her hands. She's a college student who has to work much harder than most kids her age to pull off attending classes, completing assignments, and being involved in college life. And then there's the challenge of paying for college, but you'll hear more about that as I continue our story. Let me tell you about some of the ways this disease affects everyone in our family. First of all, our life has become all about triaging and reorienting. Things can change on a dime for us, depending on how the girls are feeling, and the unpredictable nature of our days is like living in one big domino setup. Having 2 chronically ill kids, there are times when my care is divided and I have to decide who is more in need of my attention at any given moment. Just over a month ago, Erin had jaw surgery on a Monday. That Saturday, Laura needed to be taken to the emergency room for some disturbing new symptoms. Poor Erin, still very much recovering, suddenly the healthier one, had to give up my care because Laura was in more urgent need of attention. As I just mentioned, Erin had jaw surgery 5.5 weeks ago. Laura had a more extensive jaw surgery 3.5 years ago. These were necessary as a direct result of JIA destroying their TMJs, or temporomandibular joints. You see, not one of the drugs on the market today has been found to be effective in treating arthritis in the jaw. Some people have found success with certain drugs, but this is atypical. Compared to adult RA patients, JIA patients see jaw disease at a much higher rate. This, of course, has caused a cascade of dominoes in our lives. Erin is not able to work this summer and earn money for college because of the surgery and extensive recovery period. We now have to travel to a hospital 2 hours away for Laura to see a jaw specialist because she has surpassed the expertise of the doctors in our area and medications have not been effective. Erin will follow her there in a year or so, most likely. In addition to current drugs not effectively treating the TMJ arthritis, the types of juvenile arthritis my girls have, spondyloarthritis and psoriatic arthritis, do not respond well to what's currently available on the market. Fatigue is a common, incredibly limiting symptom in these particular types of patients, and as you saw on the poll for many types of patients, and it's not easily controlled with anything that's available. With these types, there's a lot of trial and error, requiring frequent medication changes and agreeing to settle for a drug that seems good enough. Just an example, Laura has been through just about everything that's available, and we're hoping that she can hold on to what she's on right now. Also, comorbidities are very often present in JIA patients of all ages. In a 2013 study published in Clinical and Experimental Rheumatology, 62% of the adult JIA patients surveyed reported having at least one comorbidity. These can be other autoimmune diseases, such as diabetes or gastrointestinal disorders, or they can be problems caused by side effects of medications. A prime example is the fact that my daughter Laura has developed exogenous Cushing's syndrome as a result of protracted use of steroids as a part of various arthritis treatment regimens, and that's very common. The presence of comorbidities triggers the needs for more doctors, more appointments, more medications, and more dominoes fall. To this point, I've talked mostly about my girls, but what about the effects on my husband and me? At our ages and stage of life, with both of our kids now young adults, we should be able to do things like travel and maybe devote more time to our hobbies. I was a stay-at-home homeschooling mom for many years, and I loved that life, but I should have been able to go back to work by now. I should be able to earn money to help pay for college. I should be able to quilt for hours or audition for a play. My husband and I should have been able to take the trip we had planned last year to celebrate our 25th anniversary. Because of JIA and all that comes with it, these things are not our reality. I am only able to work very part-time because I need to be available to take the girls to appointments and manage the unpredictability of our days. My husband has worked 2 jobs for most of our marriage. We thought he would just have to do that to get us through those tough early years. But guess again, see, more dominoes. Here's what I'd like to leave you with today. Juvenile arthritis has stolen some of our hopes and dreams, but we've created new ones and found new purpose in life. The fact that my girls and I are here today is proof of that. That said, we'd be thrilled to be able to resurrect some of our old dreams and hopes without pain, without fatigue, with effective treatment for all aspects of juvenile arthritis. Gaining control over this disease will be a game changer for my family, for every family represented in this room, and as well as those participating at home. It will allow us to live more predictable lives and reverse the domino effect. Everyone here can play their part in helping us to achieve this, and we would be so grateful for your help. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nick Kim. I'm 17 years old, and I am a rising senior at the Bergen County Academies, which is a high school back in New Jersey. I work as an intern at Hackensack Hospital in pediatric rheumatology. And I was actually diagnosed with enthesitis-related JIA last October, making it almost 1 year, which means that I'm about to celebrate my first birthday as a JIA infant this upcoming year, which is something I'm excited about. But reflecting on how much progress I've made this year, I just can't help but think of how hard it was at first for me initially, and how hard it still is for me now. So before I was diagnosed, I used to play a lot of tennis. I would play 2 to 3 hours every day, even in the school year and the summer, and it was something I really loved doing. And even when I went somewhere and they required me to write a bio, I would always write about tennis, and it was just something I really loved doing and talking about it, and I just felt like it was a part of me. And that is until the elbow pain came. And at first I dismissed it as tennis elbow, but when the pain started spreading to my knees, and then my ankles, and then my wrists, and practically every other joint I could think of, this was when I thought something is definitely wrong. And here we went to a pediatrician, and he told us that he thought it could be mono. And I remember thinking, I was panicking because I didn't know what to tell my mom, because mono is transmitted through kissing, and how do I explain through my mom that, you know? But as time passed, I realized that this was the least of my worries, because with each passing day presented a struggle that I had no idea how to cope with. So I remember I woke up one day and I was in my bed, and it was like sleep paralysis. It was like I couldn't get up, but it was so stiff and I couldn't move. And so I had to call my mom, and I was just lying there in bed, and she had to sort of put her arm underneath my back so she could sort of gently lift me up. And even on days where I could get up, I found that I couldn't dress myself, I couldn't chew, I couldn't swallow, I couldn't walk. And to see 17-year-old me, just having to see my mom dress me, it was just so hard to deal with that fact. that I couldn't really dress myself. And what was even worse was that one day I just woke up because I heard something, and I just saw my mom next to me at my bedside, and she was just holding my hand, and she was just crying. And I didn't really know how to deal with that because, like, what am I supposed to do? So I just felt so helpless, and I just watched her cry. And I want to say that it's gotten better from there, but I really can't, because it was just a decline from there until I got my diagnosis. And on my diagnosis date, which is October 13th, 2017, it was so traumatic for me because I feel like I've had my fair share of medical trauma in the past. I've broken an arm, I've ruptured my eardrum, but even through that, my mom has never shed a tear in front of the doctor, and when she heard my diagnosis, she just completely broke down. And me as her son, when I saw that, it was just so hard for me to see her suffering because of me. But as much as it hurt me physically, for me what hurt even more was the social aspect of adjusting at school. And in terms of like fitting in with my friends and surviving in school. So as a teenager who can never leave his phone, and I always prioritize my social life above every other part of my life, knowing that I couldn't do the things I wanted to because of my disease. It just hurt me so much, and this was evident in scenarios where in school I had to drop out of AP Calculus BC, and I worked so hard to get in that class, but my body couldn't handle the workload that this class required, and other times where I couldn't go up the stairs, so I had to take the elevator, but I couldn't because my friends would ask me, why are you taking the elevator? And I didn't know what to say because I didn't want to give off the impression that I was, in lack of better words, I was crippled. And even the SAT, which is so crucial to my college application process, which I'm starting now, I had to cancel it because I couldn't sit there and hold the pencil for 4 hours and just in a chair for 4. It was just so taxing on my body, so I had to cancel my SAT. But the worst part was that I couldn't even tell my friends about it because I didn't want others to think I was weak. And even if I did, they wouldn't take me seriously because of the label arthritis. And this is why I hate the word arthritis, because juvenile idiopathic arthritis, arthritis undermines the struggle that each one of us as patients have to go through, and how much hardship we face as not just patients, but just as people. So there are a few points I really want to get across this morning. And the first is, pain is pain, but what hurts even more for me is the emotional burden and the social aspect of adjusting to this disease. So you might not see it physically present in a patient, but you have to automatically assume that this patient is hurting so much inside, because for me it was way worse than the pain, the physical pain that came with this disease. My next point is that as a community, we have come so far. In a sense, us as patients, we were our own doctors. We experimented on our own bodies. We had to see what worked and what didn't. And by adding 1% here, 1% there, slowly that 15% rose to a 90%, and progress was evident. It was sure, but it was slow, but it was definite. And I still remember what it was like to feel like not to be able to get up and to see my mom crying at my bedside like that. But honestly, it's because of all the effort that we put in together collectively that we are where we are right now. So I encourage all of us to try even harder to come up with new, unprecedented ways to achieve the unthinkable. My last point is to keep listening. I want to remind you all that this is a disease that I will never be free from. It's something that will never leave me. And as a fellow patient, I've gotten so much insight and hope from hearing about the stories of each patient, listening to their resilience. And one of the most valuable things, even under the thought that this disease is so hard on me, but something I've gained from this is the caregiver community that JIA offers. By enduring together, being united, and replacing our shared sense of despair with hope, it's provided me not just with reassurance, but maybe in the end that idea that, it'll be okay. So I ask you to continue to listen to panels like these, getting insight from individuals and not patients collectively. This is just as important as the science behind the scenes. And maybe if we do all of this, and maybe one day in the future, upon hearing a JIA diagnosis, we'll sort of let out a sigh of relief rather than being scared of a journey of uncertainty. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kirsten Wilder, and I'm from Southern Maine. Grew up in this area, though, so it feels a little bit like home. I work part-time customer service at a specialty foods company, but my primary job is being the mom to 3 teenagers, the youngest of which is my daughter, Catherine, who's over there. When Catherine was 3, she was diagnosed with her own version of JIA. This coming fall, she's going to be a freshman in high school. Not quite ready for that yet. Her treatment, we receive in Boston. Boston is about a 2-hour drive for us. So I think my car knows the way and back by now. It's been 11 years. So Catherine's JIA story started just days after her 3rd birthday. What started out as a little cold turned out to actually be a bad case of strep throat. She got the scarlet fever rash and everything. It was pretty impressive, high fevers, and the fever didn't go away. She's my 3rd kid. Everybody's had strep. Fever usually goes away. And then the rash changed. And then about a week after she started the antibiotics, she woke me up in the middle of the night screaming bloody murder. My little quiet 3-year-old who was content to just smile and watch her big brothers play was screaming like I'd never heard anybody scream before. By the end of the day, we had spent the entire day at the hospital. Of course, it was a Saturday, so her pediatrician came in, took us to the hospital from his office, spent the day with her running labs, running tests, trying to figure out what was going on. Labs, of course, were terrible. He personally looked at them under the microscope multiple times and was very proud to come in and say, well, I've ruled out cancer. I went, excellent, okay. So that was the day 1. After that, it was 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. This girl who was very social, very chatty, knew everyone and everything, stopped talking. She stopped walking. She stopped feeding herself. She started actually hiding from people that would come to see her. She began just laying on me, literally like a newborn infant. 3-year-old who refused to walk. And it was interesting because, like I said, it was 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. Many evenings by the time Dad got home from work or the brothers from school, she would try to get up and go and be super excited. She'd find a way to wobble over sometimes, sometimes not. So it was very confusing, very terrifying, very confusing. Over the next couple of months, she had multiple misdiagnoses of random childhood things because every day was a new rash, every day was a fever. Then the next day, it's all gone and she's okay. About a month in, her pediatrician went, you know what, I need to send you down to Children's, Boston Children's in our area. She said, let's just rule out arthritis. And I'm like, arthritis? What are you talking about? So let's see, this was April when this symptoms started. In July, mid-July, she had her first appointment with who was to become her new best doctor. And her rheumatologist, her pediatric rheumatologist, took one look at her and said, well, this is an obvious case of JIA. I mean, obvious. She showed me that what I learned to be my hypermobile child, who could bend her knees backwards, her elbows backwards, now had one knee that was contracted and stuck like that. So they were opposites. One went back and one went forward. So then we immediately began what was a protocol in our area at that time, which was 6 weeks of NSAIDs, and let's see what happens. And it was like a gift, amazing. Immediately she felt so much better. And then within a week we realized, well, she was really, really, really bad off. So much better wasn't very much better. So soon after it was DMARDs, biologics, everything that went along with that. I think prednisone was in there week 1, just one med after another, trying to get this girl back to functioning. So over the next several years, she's gone through 3 DMARDs, 5 biologics, injections, infusion, pills, and the works. She has seen every specialist under the sun, because something she likes to do is, what often happens with these things, is she picks up random different illnesses, diseases that need their own unique specialist. So between the regular appointments with rheumatology, monthly infusions, PT, OT, continue, we know how to get to Boston and back very well. For Catherine, the pain and exhaustion have always been the primary issues. Once she was on these medications, her doctor called her a simmerer. Everything just kind of simmered. So she can manage with the joints, she can manage this, but the pain and fatigue never go away. For us as her family, it is the management side of thing. Like I said, the multiple appointments, the constant traveling, but the impact is, it's just all pervasive. For school for this girl, extensive supports, wheelchair, everything you can name it, and still she's usually on a partial day, often a partial week. If there's one thing, two things that I could leave you with today, aside from my thanks for being here, is that this is all pervasive. You are not looking at a kid who goes in, gets their medicine, goes home, and goes back to school. This child has never been in sports. This child does not stay after school. She does not, if she goes to a party, it's, oh, we really have to think about this. Is this worth it? How is this gonna affect you the rest of the day? It is an all-pervasive thing. And as for the family as well, I'm part-time because I'm full-time caretaker. So the financial aspect, the location, we can't leave the job, we can't leave the area, we must have these securities in place for her. And the second thing that I just want to reiterate a million times over is the appreciation for this varied group of people that all have this one common goal, and the idea of actually having a stronger priority on our pediatrics and the processes, streamlining, whatever we can do to get it down, to get these meds that these kids need immediately, have the choices. She's been told multiple times with different points in her life that this is it. This is it. Whatever your side effects are, whatever the problem is, whatever it's not doing, this is it. It's thrilling to see that big long list of things that are in the pipeline that may someday be options for her. And I appreciate each and every one of you for being here, for listening to us, keeping your open mind, and thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Corinne Pinter. I'm here from Sugar Land, Texas, a suburb of Houston. I'm representing my 10-year-old daughter, Emily, as you see her in the pictures. I'm a mother of 3. I have a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, and 7-year-old. I'm currently a part-time cosmetologist, but a full-time parent and caregiver to my lovely little kiddos, especially Emily. So our journey started 8 years ago on Emily's 2nd birthday. She fell off our swing set in the backyard, playing around with her sister. She presented pretty well afterwards, nothing broken, nothing crazy, made sure she was all right, checked out, she was great. Woke up the next morning for her 2nd birthday party, exciting day. However, going to change her, grabbing her little hand, she pulled her hand away and winced, and I noticed she had 2 little swollen fingers, which was weird. Then we continued to change her, got her up, she walked through the house and she was limping. Again, not normal for a 2-year-old on the day of her birthday party. So we decided to take her to the ER to get her checked out. And after some examination, x-rays, blood work, they thought, well, she's got reactive arthritis to maybe a virus. She's 2. I mean, what 2-year-old isn't sick with something? Seems strange, but we had some sort of an answer, so we had to follow up with the rheumatologist and a pediatrician. So we get to the pediatrician first the next week and run the blood tests, and they're like, oh yeah, it's juvenile arthritis. Well, that just isn't normal. Do you hear out of a 2-year-old? Like, it's no big deal. So again, with further testing, you know, MRIs, scans, all the 9, the blood work, just to make sure our bases are covered, she indeed was diagnosed in April with juvenile idiopathic arthritis. So in all this, your mind's spinning. What do we do? Medicines, not medicines. Is she going to be in a wheelchair? Is she not going to be in a wheelchair? Are there surgeries? You know, all these questions that most mothers and parents of 2-year-olds don't ask because it's not normal. So little Emily gets this diagnosis, and we talk about treatment, and I have a phone call with the doctor, and he said, well, we're going to test her for leukemia. And I was like, leukemia? Why? He's like, well, we can treat that. Okay. Right to the heart, right to the gut. Last thing you want to hear is that's what they're looking for to treat. Once we figure out she does not have leukemia but juvenile arthritis, we realize we have a long road ahead of us that is going to be possibly a bumpy road, maybe a smooth road. We don't know. It's a big question mark. So in the early days of this, it's the constant struggle of people don't understand the gravity of what this is on us that weighs almost every day, literally every day. We do get some excellent suggestions from people of what we should do and how we should treat our child, because everybody, including, Dr. Internet, knows all that goes along with it, not knowing you have an excellent care team that actually is trained and can guide you where to go and what to do with this. And even though they are helpful suggestions, icing joints doesn't always fix arthritis. There's no fix. But in the light of that, there are a lot of functional challenges she does have. She has to have pencil grips at school, accommodations. You have to be careful of backpacks, shoes, clothes, a little toddler. I mean, you see her in there. Certain shoes she has to put on because she can't buckle. You have to Velcro. She can't tie shoes because the mobility and flexibility in her fingers isn't the same. Zippers, buttons. So many things go into our day-to-day lives that we have to think this out. And a lot of times clothing companies at the time were not thinking what we are. Things weren't available for us, however they are. The fact that this is constant is another thing other families of normal kids don't understand. One of my best friends the other day came up with an analogy. It's like wearing glasses. When you need glasses, you have to wear them every day to see. Emily has this every single day. We as a family have this every single day, and it's something we have to constantly think of. Day-to-day challenges. One of the things I have, let me grab it, I forgot it. This is Emily from day one diagnosis to today. 8 years of appointments, 8 years of illness, 8 years of changes. This comes everywhere with me. A lot of times in the doctor's office, they'll be looking up on the online charts, and I flip through to the date, and I said, yeah, I remember, it's right here. All of the things. Healthy kids, parents, don't have this. We have this. We have this for ourselves. We have this sometimes for our other kids, because when you have multiple kids, you have to make sure you know what's going on with everybody at one time. This is where your brain lives a lot of the times. And another thing is an impact on the whole family. As you've heard of other moms up here, we don't always get to work full-time because we full-time take care of our children. We take care of their appointments. We take care of everything day to day. It's hard for us to get back into the workforce full-time because you don't know what the day is going to bring. If we have to call in sick, if they're having a bad day, you have to leave. They have to miss school. They have to miss appointments. They have to miss activities. It's our constant burden. So now that we are 8 years later, the difference between 2 and 10 is at 2, I had to make all the decisions. That's tough on a mama. I had to make some very tough decisions on medications, course of treatment, long-term for her. Now that she's 10, she can start to make some decisions on her own. However, we still have to guide her in the right direction. Another thing to know is this is invisible to a lot of people, just as Nick said. It looks like she's normal and smiling and happy. Underneath, not the same. Behind closed doors, completely different kid. Crying, tired, overwhelmed, mentally drained, all the things. But over the years, what I've learned is how important it is to speak up, to get involved, and we have to be part of the solution. One of the things I'm trying to do is get myself involved in participating in the research, helping to provide insight of parents, because we also have to speak on behalf of our children. And we can't make progress in finding new and better treatments if we don't work together as patients and parents, and also giving the younger kids a say in all of this. So we, as the patients and families, are taking this on, as you see. We appreciate this, and we do look forward to working with all of you to make this future for our children just a bit better. So again, thank you for allowing us to be here and listening.
Well, first of all, wow, and thank you all so much. I mean, we heard so many important points. We heard about the unpredictability of the disease. We heard about how it's a thief and it steals all kinds of things. We heard about the emotional impact, not just the emotional impact on parents watching their kids hurt, but on kids watching their parents hurt. But we also heard about resilience and hope and energy to work together to make things better. So I think our panelists really kind of set us up for a great conversation. So thank you all so much for sharing all of that. We're going to move right into the next part of the conversation that they've begun. And here again, we invite all of you to please join in, share your thoughts and insights. How does JIA affect your daily life on the best days and the worst days? And I will share that I think this really can speak to that unpredictability that you all mentioned. We heard in the focus groups that there is a huge disparity, and sometimes when you're talking about making accommodations and changes, that's actually on a good day. On a bad day, maybe you're not doing anything at all. So I think there's a great deal of variance. So I see some folks by the mic. Great. And please introduce yourself with your first name when you give a comment.
Is it on? Okay. My name is Caitlin. I have a beautiful 4-year-old little girl, Nora, who was diagnosed right after her 3rd birthday with systemic JIA. And for us, the daily life is hard. She's got 2 younger brothers, so as a mom, I gave up my career to stay home and make sure that she got to all of her appointments, her therapies, her infusions, all of that. So that's a lot on us, but we do it because she's great. But the hard part on our daily life is watching her, and you can see in her mind how things work. About 6 months ago, she came home one day from ballet and said, "Mommy, I can't do it anymore. It hurts, and I can't go back." And we spent 2 weeks with her in tears every day because she wanted to go back and be with her friends, but she didn't want to deal with the pain. And then about 3 weeks ago, she was like, "When I don't have arthritis, Mommy, I'll go back to ballet." And we just kind of sat there, and I didn't have much to say to her because we have failed 2 medications, and we're continuing to try the 3rd one, but she's not in control, and we still have really hard days. And so our daily life, even today we FaceTimed her, and I could just tell on her face, and I said, "Honey, what's wrong?" And she was like, "I don't feel good today." So we face a lot of it, and she's just starting to realize kind of how to control her, or how to verbalize her own feelings on how she feels, and we're really trying to push that. But our life has been completely changed from this disease, and we really need better things for her, because even in the past year, we've kind of lost a lot of her childhood. She spends a lot of it at home and inside. So that's why we're here, and we're hopeful to kind of push for some of that.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Hi, I'm Tammy, and our son is 13. He has SJIA, and his onset was when he was 10. We have we're on our 3rd biologic. We have never gained good control for him. Daily, I would say, mostly, I think we live in fear because things can change so quickly. He does trend toward MAS very easily. We had some pharmacy problems, and even 6 to 11 days can just flip our kid completely upside down. When he can ride his bike, when he can do full days of school, or mow the lawn. I mean, for us, those are victorious days. The same way we would cheer for an athlete. We're like, yes, he had a normal day, or he got to go to Grandma and Grandpa's and play really hard, and we're gonna pay for it for 2 weeks, but yay! So I would just say fear, and just already being here, I can see that no matter what category we're falling into, I did not know that we had so much in common as far as fears and feeling misunderstood and hating the name arthritis. However, this foundation is doing so much for us. I mean, my eyes are just popped open just from the commonalities and the common struggles that we all have, that I already feel so much better understood. And I think that already, as far as the systemic piece, you guys, you got it. So awesome, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Stacy. My daughter's 6 years old. She was diagnosed at 3. She has extended with uveitis and hypermobility. I'm a single mom, so the ability to work part-time and be 100% full-time caregiver is very difficult. I am blessed enough that my employer is very flexible about being able to work remotely when I've needed to, or take extra time off when I've needed to without penalty, but that is a fear. I am the insurance carrier for her. I've had friends tell me, well, maybe, my employer is hiring and, it would be an increase in pay. And while that sounds amazing, that fear of not having the medical insurance that I currently have, the established doctors, having to change doctors, go through all of that pre-approval again to make sure that her treatment doesn't change. Coming on this trip from Des Moines, Iowa, we had to think through all the walking and, how is she going to do? She is one of those little kids who she doesn't want people to know. If she decides to tell, then she's willing to share, but otherwise she doesn't want me bringing it up. She doesn't want me telling people. She doesn't want people to know that she's hurting. She'll push through it. The most common comment I get from people is, well, you'd never guess. She looks like a normal kid. And then as soon as, like somebody said, as soon as we get behind that closed door, it's meltdown. It's, I'm hurting, mommy. I can't move. We've had 2 days. We got here on Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, we did all of the tours, and we brought her chair with us just in case. And I think we logged almost 30,000 steps on Monday and Tuesday alone, and she was so excited to see everything and kept asking her, are you okay? Do you need to sit down? Nope, let's keep going. Yesterday, all day in the hotel, mommy, we need the chair. She is 6 months medicated remission at this point, but we are also now looking at her collarbone that now has inflammation since we've gotten here. We've done soaks every night. I've made, I don't know how many trips to Walgreens already since we got here. And she brought her weighted blanket with her, which is kind of helping a little bit as well. But that's something that we always, even being in medicated remission, I don't feel, I remember when the doctor used that word, and my mom and I cried, and she couldn't figure out why we were crying because, Mom, you normally don't cry until you're on the way home. You're doing it in the office. And are these happy tears? Are these sad tears? What's going on now? And, explaining to her what remission, what that word meant. But still, every day, we know that that word can be taken away from us. And living in constant fear and still having to plan for the hypermobility pain, every eye appointment, we've had a terrible time keeping her uveitis under control, and we know that's the wild card to take us out of remission in a heartbeat. Anytime, and she's one of those kids, she's very rare, she has symptoms when the uveitis flares. So she gets sensitive to light and can't handle any kind of bright lights and that kind of thing. So that's our trigger a lot of times. Helping her understand that even though she's in medicated remission, she still has to take her shots. She still has to do her medication is very hard to explain to a 6-year-old. So on that day-to-day, how do you plan? Even, having the R word in our life, we are still thinking every day, what do I need to plan for? Because this can change any second. And I'm beyond blessed that we're here and totally don't feel kind of alone anymore. So I just thank you for listening to our voices.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ellie, and this is my mom, Becky. I'm 13 years old, and I was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis 2 years ago, or about 2 years ago. And when I was diagnosed, I was currently wearing 2 wrist braces every day. I couldn't write in school. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it through a full day of school or not. We always had grandparents ready to come pick me up if I wasn't able to make it through the whole day, and those were pretty much some of the worst days that I've had when I first started. And now every now and then I get different flare-ups, and we don't know when I'm going to have them. I sometimes have, this last year I had to go into school for like a week in a wheelchair, and my friends had to take me to my different classes, and I was definitely depending on other people to help me get around and write for me in school. And if I wasn't in school, give me my work, and my parents had to write for me at home. And I couldn't play sports, I couldn't run around or go to different activities, and it was very hard to go to sleepovers because I had to remember to take my medications, eat before I had to take different pain meds. I was taking the as-needed medications pretty much every day for a while. So it's really unpredictable, and even though I'm on a injection every week, I still have those bad flare-ups every now and then.
Wow, thank you so much, Ellie. You're very brave. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. We can go over here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Adam, and I'm from Southern California, and my wife, Gwen, and I currently have 7 children, and it is our youngest daughter, Sage, who is systemic. And listening today to the panelists and some of the other JA parents and a survivor with JA, I've come to realize that to me, my daughter's arthritis is the 8th child in our family. Because my wife and I could go down through all 7 of the kids, and we get down to the end, and we realize there's still one more child that we need to hold on to and grasp and take care of. And when we come home from work and we're tired, I can see the race that my wife and I have to grab 4 kids first, because the other one's gonna have to have 3 kids, and then that last 8th child. That can be so difficult and so challenging and so unusual, because you don't know when you wake up whether it's going to be an 8th child that is in the terrible 2s or an 8th child that is gonna be that calm 13-year-old, or that 8th child that is that horrific, argumentative 17-year-old daughter. And that is a daily task that we go through, because you don't know what it's going to be like. And you can set up all 7 perfectly, and then there's that cloud of the 8th that sits over my daughter, Sage, as a small cloud that blocks the sun, or a horrific thunderstorm that absolutely rains down on everything that we call a parade of having a family. And I think it's living with that 8th child that is hard to describe to a family that doesn't have a child that is suffering or surviving with juvenile arthritis. And it's even difficult to explain it to doctors and researchers, because until you have that 8th child, you'll never know. But I hope in listening to us, you have an idea of what it is to have that 8th child.
Wow, thank you. I think that we've got some really clear themes, both from the panel and what you've all shared in the room. This unpredictability, just not knowing when it's going to strike or when it might be a good day that you can celebrate. And that's a real challenge. I think several people spoke to fear, because you're fearful of those bad days, that loss of control. Those are all incredibly challenging. So thank you all for sharing. I want to check in the back and see if we have any questions or comments from our online participants.
Yes, Sue, thanks. Actually, there's one comment here in particular that kind of sums up exactly what you were just saying, in that this parent commented that on the worst day, their son quits talking, walking, eating, and was in agonizing pain. And now the pain and symptoms are a roller coaster from day to day, which is kind of what you were just talking about.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. Anyone else in the room want to contribute kind of that distinction between good days and bad days? I saw a lot of nods. Maybe what has been said already was spot on for what you experience. And we can certainly go to our second discussion question. And I think folks are going to have a lot to say about this one too. So, oh, we do have a question. I'm sorry. Go
It's
ahead.
not a question. It's just our story's a little different. Our JIA, our daughter, my name is Nikki. Our daughter is now 8, almost 9, was diagnosed with JIA at 13 months, but got stable within 2 years with the JIA, and then she got uveitis. And for us, and I can very much relate, for us, uveitis has been our biggest roller coaster. And for Becca, our daughter, it's silent. There is no symptoms. So we'll go a year with nothing. We'll go to the eye doctor every 2 or 3 months. Things will be great. And then all of a sudden, everything drops out from under you. And you're like, oh my God, this again. And for me, as much as my fear of her having JA is my fear of her going blind and having, damage to her eyes. And I know there's not one that's worse or better, but for me, having that fear for my daughter is huge. And again, it's that constant, that fear that we all have. But it's, we have a lot of good days. She also quit ballet because of pain. But most of the time, she lives a really great life. She's a good artist, she's a fun kid. But I can tell emotionally sometimes when we have shot night every Sunday night, that's a tough night, right? Remicade's fun. She gets to get toys, and it's exciting. And even though it may be a bad day for mom and dad, it's a fine day for her. She doesn't mind it as much. But when I go to the eye doctor and they tell me that her eye is covered in cells and they can't see in the back of her eye, it just breaks my heart. And I wish, and I was on a panel last October, and we talked about different studies of different treatments and medications, and I found that there's just not any studies of uveitis in kids, or very little, and the ones that are have very small sample sizes, and I think it's a very important thing that we need to look into. It's as scary as everything else that our JIA kids go through. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think, and I'll be sure to sort of call on you later today when we talk about both treatments and clinical trials, because we do want to surface, we have a lot of commonality, but we also have some specific needs and hopes among the community. Do you have a comment?
I wanted to speak to question 2. I didn't know if you're ready to move.
Sure, we can.
You mentioned it earlier. So
We'll go to question 2.
So as far as change in our life, you heard from my wife earlier, my daughter has systemic JIA, and because of all the medical care that requires and the multiple specialists that we have to see throughout the week, when she was first diagnosed, I was working for a very small business in town. We had okay health coverage for my wife and I, but really nothing for the kids. They were on public aid, and we were very limited on where we could go. And so as a change, I took a job for a much larger company that totally turned our life upside down in addition to systemic JIA. I now travel 75% of the time, but this job affords me the ability to pay for these expensive treatments that work 50% of the time for my child, and also to make sure we have coverage at all the different specialists that we need to see. So that's change number 1. And that, you know, the burden of that is if I'm traveling and my wife calls me, is she calling me because I put something somewhere where she can't find it, or because she has to go to the emergency room for labs to make sure we're not on the cusp of MAS, which is a potentially fatal complication of systemic JIA. And so the other major change that we made in our life, when my daughter was diagnosed, we had 2 children, a daughter and a son, and we made the conscious choice that we didn't want our son, the non-JIA child, to ever be alone, whether that was when he's being raised in a waiting room or if MAS were ever to take her. We wanted him to have somebody else. So now our 6-month-old is over in the child care room. The other 2 kids are at home, but you know, that was something that shook us very much to our core, and I don't know if we would have made that decision in the same manner if it weren't for systemic JIA.
Thank you so much for sharing. That is a significant life change, definitely. What do others have? We have Colleen.
I wanted to just tag on a little bit what he was saying about siblings is that, and then everybody's talked about how this affects your whole family. My daughter was diagnosed at 3 and she's 20 now, but I have a 15-year-old and a 9-year-old, and when they were small, the things that they might have done, they didn't get to do either because of my daughter, just because, you know, you can only do so many things. And then also, like I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I didn't let Jack play soccer because Caitlin couldn't. And then I felt bad, like, ooh, she's not gonna wanna go and watch Jack play soccer. So I just didn't let Jack play soccer, and you know, so it affects the whole family. And the other thing, you know, a lot of moms have talked about working part-time, and I did that too. And now that Caitlin is 20, and I'm thinking, you know, now I'm working full-time, but this planning for, you know, how she may need me in her life doesn't stop because she's 20 now. I mean, it has affected where she went to college and what she's studying and what her potential careers might be. But, you know, she had her hips replaced at 11 and 12, and she's in that 2% that have been on more than 10 of those medications. So what does that mean if she wants to have children? And what does that mean for me? Do I get to retire? Do I have to retire? Am I gonna need to retire so I can help her be a mother if she wants to be a mother? If I help her be a mother, do my other kids get to have kids? I mean, it's just like this planning thing doesn't end now. And not to freak out those of you with little kids, I'm sorry, but just, you know, how this affects what we choose to do, where we choose to live, it doesn't end. Even when the disease is quiet, it doesn't end.
Yeah, that's an important point. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Erin. I'm Angie's younger daughter. Hi, Mom. So she mentioned that I'm in college. I am a rising sophomore theater major. I go to school 2 blocks away from where I live, which is really, really nice. But, you know, with college, it's a major change for people anyway, but I have arthritis and a couple comorbidities on top of that. So that just makes all the planning even longer. Like I said, I'm a theater major. I, for this semester, have lined up a couple technical jobs with our productions, which I am extremely excited about. Unfortunately, our technical booth, where the stage manager and soundboard operator and lightboard operator sit, is up 3 flights of stairs, and there's no elevator. And there's really no way to make that space ADA compliant with the structure of the building. So on, days when I am going to be a stage manager for our second production of the year, I'm going to have to be planning very carefully how I spend my energy so that at the end of the day for those performances, I can get up those stairs. Right now, one of my greatest fears is that I won't be able to get up those stairs and call the show, and there's going to be a major problem, and I'm going to feel terrible because I'm, going to feel like I caused it, even though, I can't really control my arthritis. So this is in November, so I'm definitely already planning for this. But I can't really study abroad either. That's something that's greatly emphasized at my school. There's big study abroad fairs, and I'm like, look, I can't go because I won't have my mom there to help me around in wheelchair and things like that. Can't really take an infusion on the road with me, and it's, for those of you who have tried traveling with injectable medication, that can be very, very difficult. So, even a short 2-week trip is just too much for me. So there is so much planning day to day. Sometimes I'll be like, hey mom, I'm not coming home today because I can't do the walk back and forth 3 times today. So I'm just gonna stay on campus. I'll see you at 2 o'clock in the morning when I get home from rehearsal. So there are so many more things that we have to plan for that just normal people would never even think about. Thank you.
My name's Laura. I'm Angie's older daughter. And I don't have a story like changes I've had to make in college or anything because I haven't gone to college. But one change that will be happening very shortly is I'm getting a service dog, and it is partially for my arthritis, partially for my comorbidities, but the dog will be able to do things like open doors for me. And this is a big deal for us because Mom and Aaron are allergic to dogs. So we're planning how we're going to be able to handle this so that I can have more independence and access to a companion who can help me. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. Good luck. Melanie?
Hello, everyone. My name is Melanie, and I will be speaking on the treatment panel later today, but in the essence of saving some time, I thought this might be a good opportunity for me to share some of the burden of disease type points. Otherwise, I would probably have a 4-hour presentation up there. My daughter was diagnosed at 20 months old. She started with symptoms at around 11 months old, and she is now 7. As far as changes that we've had to make, basically everything. Corinne's point about the clothing and the shoes, they stopped making Velcro tennis shoes at a certain size, and my daughter, is getting there now. So she finally learned how to tie her shoes, but what if that's not an option, right? There are days where we wear leggings and pull-on boots because I know that we're gonna need those. There are days that we can wear jeans, but they can't have a snap, they have to have a hook. There are days where, we kind of have to plan. So even the good days, require some planning just because of medications and things like that. The bad days, I send her to school and hope for the best that I don't hear from the nurse the minute she walks off the bus. We have tummy trouble almost daily. Whether that's an anxiety thing, a side effect of a medication, her actual disease, some sort of comorbidity we're developing, who knows? But if she feels that crummy, I am full-time mom. And so for that reason, I've had to cancel attending some meetings before, because I needed to be nearby to pick her up from school. Every single ache, pain, scrape, tumble requires rheumatology mommy, not just regular mommy. So when I hear my leg hurts, my elbow hurts, she could have fallen and has a scratch on her elbow, but I immediately look at not that one, but this one too. Is this one puffy? Is that one normal? You default into thinking the worst that it could be, the disease. And to be quite frank with you, rheumatology daddy doesn't cut it. So if I get a text that says Megan's elbow hurts and I say, he goes, yes, I checked both of them. It doesn't matter. Send me a picture. I need left, right. I need all angles. I need to look at it because rheumatology daddy is not rheumatology mommy, right? So even when I am traveling, and everybody will meet rheumatology daddy. He's finally here for the first time at a meeting. And so he'll be here later. Just planning around the medication. I mean, we are on an infused drug at this point. Rheumatology daddy has offered to take her to an infusion before over my dead body. So, and she's doing great. We don't have an issue with her infusions. She sits there by herself. I sit in the corner and hang out for 3.5 hours. But, it requires a lot of planning. We ended up with an infusion on a day that her entire class was doing a really fun Christmas activity, and I could not move it. There were no appointments available for another week. I didn't want to delay her medication, so she had to miss that. There definitely is an impact, even when your child is doing well. And I think that, this impact hits the entire family. I'm with Colleen. My older daughter doesn't get to play impact sports either. We don't do it. We don't do soccer. We don't do flag football. We don't do the things where one could get hurt. Quite frankly, sometimes I feel like if my older daughter gets hurt, is that going to trigger her underlying potential arthritis? She injured her back doing something silly a few years ago, and I immediately said, this is it. Now both of them are diagnosed. Here we go. And luckily everything, knock on wood, has been okay with her. But it definitely affects how we plan absolutely positively everything. I don't allow either of my children to attend birthday parties at trampoline parks or bounce houses and things like that because I feel like it's not fair. So it's not fair to my older one all the time, but it's not fair, to my younger one to have her sister do those things. And the immune suppression. That probably hits us the most. If it's flu season and a cousin had a cough a week ago, we cancel Thanksgiving. I'm not willing to risk my daughter getting sick. We've been in a lot of positions where people have not been super thoughtful and have attended, and my child gets sick and we're down for a week as opposed to the 48 hours someone else is down. So we absolutely have made a bazillion changes, and that's with a child who's under pretty decent control. So we'll talk more about treatment stuff later and side effects, but those were some of my points, that I wanted to make about this disease and how it's affected all of us.
Super. Thank you, Melody.
Hi, I'm Brooke. Our daughter Kate is with us. She's 13. She was diagnosed at 18 months old. Kate is a little different in that her arthritis has been pretty well controlled. She's been on 3 medications. She's currently on an infusion. But even with a well-controlled, very active child who plays lacrosse and travel softball, we still have made a lot of changes in our life. One of the biggest is we had to move her from public school to private school. She missed 30 days of school in kindergarten because there was only one nurse between 5 schools, and she was there Thursday afternoon. So we had to find a private school that had a full-time nurse. She missed 6 days once we moved her. So it's a huge difference, but it's a huge burden too. We've also had to, my husband and I both have to work, and we enjoy that, but we have to work in very flexible jobs because we have to go to an infusion once a month. And if we had to take vacation every time we had to go to an infusion, guess what our vacation would be, right? In the hospital infusion lab. So we've had to make some real changes. They've all been changes that we've embraced and we understand. I had a great therapist tell me one time that everybody has to deal with something in their lives. You just got to find yours out really early. And so we try to approach it that way all the time. But even then, she was out of PE for all of 4th grade. We were lucky she was in a school that found something else for her to do during that time. But out of PE for a whole year, even well medicated and well taken care of. And when she plays travel softball, the kids do notice she's a little different. She misses some things. When you're 13, it's not really fun to be different. Luckily, we have a very vocal child who speaks up and speaks out and will talk about it. But still, even in what is probably one of the best cases for this debilitating disease, we're still making all of these changes.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name's Karen. My daughter, Laura, is 6, and she has SJIA. So when I think about some of the basic changes, Her biologics didn't work. The ones for her IL-1, the IL-6, it did work. Unfortunately, it makes your white blood cell count go really low, and if that happens, then you have to discontinue use until your body's immune system builds itself back up, which it has not done yet. So how does that change us? She can only take some of the approved medications that are currently out there. We wake up about 30 to 45 minutes earlier than the rest of the world, so she can stretch. So she can just lay in the bed and rotate her ankles and her wrists and things like that. And then once she gets the energy to get out of the bed, we do have a 2-floor home. So I kind of wait and to see if is she going to slide down on her butt today, or am I picking her up and walking her down the stairs? She's about 50 pounds. I can handle it. I don't know how much longer I can handle it, but that's where we're at now. Dad is retired military, and he is my blessing. So I hear a lot of these moms saying, I'm full-time, I'm the one that gets to stay home. He's full-time. He's actually upstairs because we're not ready to leave her to daycare. So he's with her now while I get to come down here and just learn a little bit more with you guys. He's on call. You know, 504s are great in the school system, but that doesn't mean that she's not going to fall that day and it's going to hurt more than another day. So he is always there for that. And then when we think about all the extracurriculars that we're nervous about putting our kids into, we have made the decision to put them in it, knowing that we're probably just losing a lot of money because she's going to sit out about half the time. But we do it anyway because we want her to be the normal kid. We want her to feel like she's engaged. So that's just all food for thought. Thank you.
I'll keep this really short because I know I'm standing between you and lunch. So I just wanted to point out one thing. I agree with all the comments and the changes we've made in our life. I can't even begin to go into that. It'll take hours to say how our life changed. I had a very sports active kid. We were supposed to go to Spain for him to play soccer. Everything changed. So we'll just leave it at that. But one thing I want to point out is it's not just my life that changed and his life that changed and our family's life that changed. My job's life has had to change. So not only is it impacting me, so I think it's important for manufacturers and FDA and everyone to realize this isn't just affecting me personally, this is affecting my company's economic forecasts. We're constantly having to plan whether I'm going to be there and not be there because I am a full-time mom and I'm also a full-time employee and I'm the person carrying the insurance. So this is way bigger than just me and my little circle. My circle is rippling out to everyone else. And that's really all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Are we good in the online?
Yes, the online comments have supported what we've been,
Great.
what the people in the room have been saying.
Super. All right. Well, I want to thank all of you, the panelists and everyone in the room and online. We've heard so much about just how profound the impacts of this disease are, all of the changes that you make, the unpredictability that you live with.